You spend your whole life trading hours of your existence for something nobody really explained to you. You wake up early, fight traffic, swallow stress, answer emails, take orders, and at the end of the month you get a number on a screen. That number decides whether you sleep peacefully or stare at the ceiling at 3 in the morning. It decides where you can live, what you can eat, and how trapped you feel. But let me ask you something simple. In all your years at school, in all your time at work, did anyone ever teach you what money actually is? You were taught how to chase it, how to earn it, how to feel guilty if you don't have enough of it. But the machine behind it, the part that really decides who stays stuck and who quietly gets ahead, that part was left out on purpose, because there is a script running under your life that you were never meant to read, a hidden script about money, debt, and control, a script that keeps most people exhausted, confused, and blaming themselves, while a tiny minority plays a completely different game with the same pieces. In this video, we're not going to talk about budgeting apps or stop buying coffee. We're going to pull back the curtain on how money is created, why the financial system needs people in debt, and how a new wave of digital money could lock this control in even deeper. Once you see the script, you can't unsee it. So let's start with the first twist. Money is not what you think it is. When you hear the word money, you probably picture something solid. Bills in your hand, coins on the table, a bank card you can swipe. It feels physical, real, almost like a piece of reality you can trust. But modern money is not metal and paper. Modern money is a story. Today's currencies are what economists call fiat money. That's just a fancy way of saying they have value because a government says so, and because enough people believe in that value. The bills themselves are just printed cotton. The digits in your banking app are just entries in a database. What gives them power is one thing: trust. You trust that when you walk into a supermarket, they'll accept your card. Your boss trusts that when they pay your salary, your bank will recognize it. Everyone trusts that the government will enforce this system as legal tender. Your paycheck is not actual wealth. It's a claim on wealth. It's a ticket that says, I am allowed to command this much food, this much energy, this much shelter. If the trust behind that ticket collapses, the number in your account is as useful as points in a video game. We've seen glimpses of this before. In moments of hyperinflation, people go to sleep thinking they're middle class and wake up realizing their salary barely buys groceries. In bank runs, people line up outside their branch, desperate to get cash before the doors close, and suddenly remember that the digits in their account were never literally sitting in a vault with their name on it. For a few short days in those crises, the illusion becomes visible. People realize that the solid thing they've been chasing is actually fragile. A belief, a story, a shared hallucination backed by laws and police. So, when you think of money, don't imagine gold bars locked away somewhere with your name on them. Imagine trust, contracts, promises. And now comes the real question. If money is just a story we all agree on, who's actually writing that story? You might think the answer is the government prints money. That's the simple version you got in school, but in reality, the government only creates a small part of the money we use. The rest of it, the majority of it, is created somewhere else, in a way that almost nobody is taught. It happens inside banks, and it starts with your signature. Here's how you probably think a bank works. People deposit their savings, the bank store that money, and then carefully lends parts of it to other people, like buckets of water being passed around. But that picture is outdated. In the modern system, when a bank approves a loan, it doesn't look around for someone else's deposits to hand you. It simply creates a deposit in your name. You sign for a $10,000 loan. The bank types $10,000 into your account. That deposit is new money. It did not exist yesterday. It appears the moment you promise to pay it back with interest. From the bank's point of view, you just gave them an asset, your IOU, your obligation to repay. In exchange, they gave you a liability, the $10,000 they now owe you on demand in your account. Two sides of the same coin. Multiply this process across millions of mortgages, car loans, business loans, and credit cards, and you start to see the real picture. Most of the money in the economy was not printed by a government. It was typed into existence by commercial banks when loans were approved. Cash, actual notes and coins, is just a tiny slice of the total. The rest is bank credit. Numbers backed by contracts. And what backs those contracts? Your future work, your future time, your future stress. Money, in other words, is not backed by gold. It's backed by human lives promised to future payments. And there's one detail that makes this design very, very unstable. Because every time money is created as debt, it's created with interest attached. Imagine you and I live in a tiny town. I borrow the only $100 in existence from the local bank at 10% interest. After a year, I owe $110, but there's only $100 in circulation. For me to repay the full amount either, I have to earn dollars someone else lost, or someone else has to go into debt so that new money appears. Now scale this up to global size. Governments borrow trillions. Companies borrow billions. Households borrow for homes, cars, degrees, holidays, emergencies. Every one of those loans comes with interest that was not created when the loan was born. The system, by design, needs more debt tomorrow to pay for the debt of yesterday. That's one reason you hear politicians sound terrified when economic growth slows. When growth stalls, the treadmill that keeps this machine running slows down. And a debt-based system, on a slow treadmill, gets unstable very quickly. Look at the numbers. Major economies carry government debts in the tens of trillions. Households carry record levels of mortgages, student loans, credit card balances, and personal loans. Every year, the total amount owed climbs higher, and a huge part of global income is simply recycled into interest payments, money flowing upwards to the owners of debt. You are told to feel ashamed if you struggle. You are told it's your personal failure. You didn't budget. You weren't disciplined. But in a system where money is created as IOUs plus interest, someone has to be underwater. There is no world where everybody can be debt-free and still keep this design intact. The game requires losers. And instead of questioning the game, most people question themselves. Still, these huge numbers can feel distant. Trillions are not real to the human brain. What does feel real is the monthly message that says, minimum payment due. That's where the trap tightens, not at the level of national debt, but at the level of your daily life. Think back to the first time you were offered credit. Maybe it was a pre-approved card in a shiny envelope. Maybe it was a student loan that everyone was taking. Maybe it was the store clerk telling you, you can take it today and pay over 12 easy installments. It didn't feel like a chain. It felt like an opportunity. Advertising and culture have carefully rewritten the meaning of debt. It's no longer a last resort. It's a lifestyle tool. It's how you treat yourself. It's how you build your future. It's how you prove to the algorithm that you are successful. You're praised for spending. You're rewarded with points, miles, cashbacks. Every swipe feels like you're winning something, while in the background, you're slowly selling slices of your future time. Debt is time travel with a price tag. It lets you pull forward a future version of yourself, one who has already earned the money, and force that future self to pay for what you want today. The car, the trip, the phone, the couch, the apartment in that neighborhood. From the outside, it looks like you're living your best life. From the inside, something else is happening. Your paycheck arrives, already spoken for. A chunk for the credit card, a chunk for the car, a chunk for the student loan, a chunk for the personal loan from that time you were desperate and clicked accept at 3 a.m. The remainder is what you actually live on. And then there's social media. You don't see people posting, I'm terrified I can't pay my bills this month. You see curated fragments. The dinner, not the overdraft. The new phone, not the 24-month contract. the trip, not the hollow feeling when they check their statement afterwards. The message is constant. Everyone else is doing fine. Why aren't you? So you swipe again, finance again, smile in the photo, cry in the bathroom. Little by little, the system doesn't even need to push you anymore. You are now trained to put the chains on yourself and call it normal life. But if you ever try to escape, to really understand the contracts you've signed, you run into something else. A maze you were never meant to finish. Have you ever tried to read every line of a financial contract? Not just scroll and click, I agree. Really read it. Pages and pages of small print, variable rates, penalty clauses, triggering conditions, obscure fee schedules. Sentences that seem almost designed to make your eyes slide off the page. You don't know if your rate is fixed or floating. You don't know what happens if interest rates spike. You don't know which fees will be added if you're late by 1 day or if you go 1 cent over your limit. You might think, well, that's my fault. I should have read everything. But let's be honest. Most of these documents are not written to be understood. They're written to be defensible in court and profitable in practice. Complexity is a weapon. The more complicated the product, the easier it is to hide risk and cost. The harder it is for you to compare. The simpler it is to quietly extract money from behaviors the bank knows are common. Paying the minimum, forgetting a due date, using an overdraft as if it were income. When things go wrong, the story is always the same. You were irresponsible. You should have known better. It's never, we designed this thing so that almost no one fully understands it. Over time, that narrative sinks deep into your identity. You stop saying, this system is confusing. You start saying, I'm bad with money. Think about how powerful that shift is. A confused customer can complain. A ashamed customer stays quiet. And while you're stuck in this maze, trying to decode products that should be simple, there's a group of people using the same system in a way you were never taught. They're not running in the maze. They're walking over the walls. Here's the part that stings. The rules of the system are the same for everyone. But the playbook the wealthy use is completely different. For most people, debt is a weight, a monthly bill, a source of anxiety. They borrow to consume. They finance cars, phones, furniture, trips, restaurants, clothes. The stuff looks good on camera, but it doesn't pay them back. It just ages, breaks, or loses value. For the wealthy, debt is not a weight. It's a lever. They borrow to buy assets. Instead of financing a $30,000 car that loses value every year, they finance a $300,000 rental property that brings in monthly rent. Instead of maxing out a card on lifestyle, they use lines of credit to buy shares in businesses, to expand companies, to acquire things that generate cash. If you borrow $5,000 on a card at 20% interest to travel, that trip costs you far more than the ticket price. It drains your future income. If an investor borrows $500,000 at 5% interest to buy a building that generates steady rent, the building can pay the loan and leave profit. Your debt buys liability. Their debt buys streams of money. On top of that, the tax code often treats their game more kindly. Interest on certain types of investment loans can be deducted. Losses can offset other income. They pay professionals to structure their finances in ways that minimize tax and maximize growth. Meanwhile, your consumer debt is paid with after-tax income. You work, the government takes a cut, and what's left services loans that bought things you no longer even remember. Then there's time. Many wealthy families start with some form of cushion, a paid-off house, savings, ownership in a business, an inheritance. That means they can start investing early. They let compound interest work for them over decades, quietly turning thousands into millions. You, on the other hand, might spend your 20s and 30s paying off debts from your attempt to simply get started in life. Student loans, car loans, credit cards. By the time you're able to invest seriously, they've already had a 20-year head start. It's not just about intelligence or discipline. It's about starting positions and rules you were never taught. From where you stand, it looks like they play by magic. From where they stand, they're just using a rule book you were never given. And while most people are just beginning to understand this, the script is already moving to its next chapter. A chapter where money might stop being something you hold and become something that can watch you back. Right now, in central banks and institutions around the world, there's a quiet race. The race to create the next generation of money. Central bank digital currencies, often called CBDCs. On the surface, they sound harmless, even exciting. Imagine an official digital wallet on your phone where you can hold money directly issued by your country's central bank. No physical cash, no waiting days for transfers. Payments that are instant, cheap, and integrated into everything. Faster, smoother, more modern. That's the sales pitch. But underneath that pitch are questions that should make you pause, because when money becomes fully digital and when every transaction flows through a centralized system, who sees that data? Who controls those switches? In such a system, in theory, every purchase, every donation, every subscription, every transfer could be visible to whoever operates the network. Patterns of behavior, political donations, spending habits, locations, relationships. It's not science fiction, it's basic data. Supporters will say there will be privacy safeguards, and many central banks are genuinely debating how to preserve some level of anonymity for small transactions. But the temptation is obvious. If the technology allows more control, somewhere, someday, someone will try to use that control. Money could become programmable. Imagine funds that can only be spent in certain places, or money that expires if you don't use it by a certain date to stimulate the economy, or accounts that can be partially frozen, restricted, or automatically fined based on rules you didn't vote on and barely understand. Again, this doesn't have to happen. But the possibility is baked into the design. Cash, for all its flaws, has one superpower: anonymity. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't report back. A fully digital, fully centralized currency is the opposite. It can, in theory, know you. If money is already a story of trust, CBDCs are like giving the author not just the pen, but also a real-time feed of every line you write with it. You can't ignore this shift. You still have to pay rent, tax, food, electricity. You still live inside the machine. But understanding what's being built gives you one thing the system really doesn't want you to have: clarity. Because once you see the structure, you can finally start asking a very dangerous question. Not, how do I play this game better, but, do I have to play the role they wrote for me? Here's the hardest truth in this whole video. You probably can't escape the system entirely. Not unless you plan to move to the middle of nowhere and live on barter. For most people, that's not realistic, and it doesn't need to be. You don't have to disappear to change your fate. You just have to quietly step out of character. The system wants you to be the perfect debtor, always a little behind, always in need of the next paycheck, always too stressed to ask deep questions, always chasing the next shiny object. Your first act of rebellion is mental, not financial. Stop treating money as a measure of your worth. It's a tool, a powerful tool in a rigged environment, yes, but still a tool. Start asking a different question before every big financial decision. Does this give me more freedom in 6 months or less? Not more comfort this weekend? Not more likes on a post? More freedom. Sometimes that means doing the unglamorous thing. Building a boring emergency fund instead of buying the next gadget. Paying down a toxic high-interest debt before jumping into fancy investments you don't understand. Spending money on skills and knowledge that increase your ability to earn in the future instead of renting impressiveness for one night. It also means looking at debt with colder eyes. Is this loan helping me buy an asset that can eventually pay me, or is it just feeding a momentary desire? If the answer is, it only looks good on Instagram, you already know whose script you're following. None of this will make you a billionaire overnight. That's not the point. The point is to slowly move from being fully controlled by the system to being conscious inside it. To stop being a passive character and start acting like a player who actually understands the board. One decision at a time. One contract you say no to. One class you take to increase your value. One purchase you delay because you know exactly what it will cost you in future stress. The financial system doesn't fear the person with the biggest paycheck. It fears the person who no longer believes the story. So now we come back to you. For years, maybe decades, you were told a simple narrative. Work hard, be responsible, and the rest will fall into place. If you're drowning in bills, you must have done something wrong. If you're anxious about money, you must be bad with finances. What you've seen in this video is a different layer of truth. You've seen that money is not a solid thing, but a story of trust. You've seen that banks create most of it out of loans backed by your future. You've seen that the system needs debt to grow, that it uses culture and complexity to keep you comfortable with your own chains, and that a small minority plays by a secret rule book that turns those same chains into levers. You've seen that the next evolution of money could make it even easier to track, to control, to reward, and punish. None of this magically pays off your balance. None of this wipes your obligations. But it does something much more important. It ends the illusion that your struggles are purely personal failures. The game is structured, the script is old. And now, for the first time, you've read some of the lines they never meant you to see. So here's the question. I want to leave echoing in your mind after this video ends. Now that you know how the game is designed, what will your next move say about you? Will you keep trading peace of mind for the appearance of success? Will you keep letting the system write your role, scene after scene? Or will you start, quietly, patiently, rewriting your relationship with money so that, piece by piece, it starts working for you, instead of the other way around? You don't need to answer me. You're going to answer yourself. The next time you're about to sign, swipe, or click, accept. Because once the hidden truth about money and the financial system is exposed in your mind, the script can't control you in the same way again.